You planted your zucchini in May. By July, it was thriving. Then one week, the stems started wilting. By the next week, the plants were dead. Most gardeners assume they did something wrong. They did not. They just did not know that a tiny moth was laying up to 150 eggs at the base of their squash plants in June, and that 9 to 11 days later, the larvae were boring into the stems and cutting off the water supply. The squash vine borer has a very specific life cycle, and once you know it, you have 3 distinct windows to stop it completely. Stacey Murphy is going to show you all 3 right now.
What if you planted a second round of squash after the pest passed, so it didn't lay any new eggs on your new plant, and maybe you could do something else special in June, like maybe you could go out and something you may have noticed was that the eggs hatch in 9 to 11 days. So maybe in June, when you know that this plant is going to be out there once a week, because those eggs, they take 9 to 11 days to hatch. So you've got those 9 to 11 days to play with. So if you're out there once a week, you can stop the eggs. And that is going to keep them from boring into your plant in the first place, right? What if you planted a second round of squash after the pest passed, so it didn't lay any new eggs on your new plant, and maybe you could do something else special in June, like maybe you could go out and something you may have noticed was that the eggs hatch in 9 to 11 days. So maybe in June, when you know that this plant is going to be out there once a week, because those eggs, they take 9 to 11 days to hatch. So you've got those 9 to 11 days to play with. So if you're out there once a week, you can stop the eggs. And that is going to keep them from boring into your plant in the first place, right?
This Q&A was recorded at a past Grow Your Own Vegetables event, where Stacey Murphy reveals the life cycle of the squash vine borer and the 3 windows where you can stop it. For more information, free resources, and gentle guidance, you can find us at growyourownvegetables.org. And to grow alongside other gardeners just like you, join our free community at gyov.org.
So, I know that you came here to talk about what do I do about all these pests, diseases, and weeds. This is something that you can do for your next growing season. So you want to do everything you can now to improve that soil fertility over the winter, all right? Now, secret number 2. You're probably thinking it's not that simple. Soil can't solve everything, right? And there's definitely a lot more you can do. Soil is the main category of your garden system where you're going to see the benefits. But there's a lot more you can do. So secret number 2, systematically create more of the habitat you want instead of reacting to the problems, all right? And so let me tell you a story. Here is Ms. Squash Vine Borer. Isn't she cute? And you already heard a bit about her decimating my zucchini plants, so maybe you don't think she's cute right now, but she's not a bad guy, right? Okay, so we already reframed my earlier problem to find a solid stem squash to grow so I didn't ever have to deal with this squash vine borer again. And that's because she was a terror in my Brooklyn garden. But in Detroit, I never experienced that problem. So you know, wherever you are, you're going to have your particular battle. So if this were just a nuisance and it wasn't an all-out failure in your garden, maybe the squash vine borer is very manageable where you are. Let me tell you a little story that might help you. So here in the Northern Hemisphere, Ms. Squash Vine Borer, beginning in late June or early July, she emerges as an adult from cocoons in the ground, and she's a good flyer for a moth. She resembles a wasp, you kind of saw that, and she wants children. So she lays up to 150 copper-colored eggs, mostly on stems of the zucchini and summer squash, but sometimes on the leaves too. And then 9 to 11 days later, those baby squash vine borer, they hatch into larvae, and that baby borer needs some food, and so it bores into the stem to feed. And there is a lot of food and water in there, it actually stops the water from being delivered to the rest of the plant, which is what leads to the plant wilting. So it's picking up all the nutrients and the water from the plant. And then about 4 to 6 weeks later, this larva is full, kind of like you are after your once a year Thanksgiving meal. And so she needs to rest and go to sleep. And so the borer now goes underground about 1 to 2 inches where she pupates, and she emerges again the following summer, again as a different moth. Okay.
Write this down. This is the complete life cycle. And now that you know it, here are the 3 points where you can interrupt it.
Different moth. Okay. So if you wanted to create a habitat that was not conducive to Miss Squash vine borer and her offspring, what would you do? And following this is what Mrs. Squash vine borer doesn't want you to know. So what did you hear in the story that you might use against her if you were trying to, let's say, get her out of your garden? All right, so yeah, somebody said, so we're going to reimagine your problem, and the words are very powerful, and so we just reimagine the story from the perspective of the squash vine borer, right? So maybe you heard June. June is one detail that you might have picked out. Yes. So what if you know that this is going to come out at that time frame, what if you planted a second round of squash after the pest passed, so it didn't lay any new eggs on your new plant, and maybe you could do something else special in June, like maybe you could go out and something you may have noticed was that the eggs hatch in 9 to 11 days. So maybe in June, when you know that this plant is going to be out there once a week, because those eggs, they take 9 to 11 days to hatch. So you've got those 9 to 11 days to play with. So if you're out there once a week, you can stop the eggs. And that is going to keep them from boring into your plant in the first place, right? So have some sort of weekly habit, go out there, and some people actually take a wet rag and they wipe the stem of all of their zucchini plants. Now this works if you have a small amount of plants. It probably doesn't work if you have a large number of plants, right? So that's one thing that you can do. And if you do it once a week for 4 weeks in June and July, let's say end of June and beginning of July, it doesn't take too long. And then you know that you're not going to get those squash vine borers.
This is the simplest solution of all. Not prevention, avoidance. Let the moth have its window and then plant after it is closed.
Squash vine borers, all right? So that's a great place to intervene, because if it feeds on your plant, it's going to end up back in your soil and you're going to have another cycle coming around. So this is a prime opportunity. If you have sort of a manageable low population of squash vine borers, is to try to get rid of the eggs. And some people have gone so far as to wrap the stems with aluminum foil to scare the moth away from laying its eggs. But you did notice that sometimes they lay their eggs on the leaves too. So you got to do a little bit of detective work there. But if you can do it once a week, spend just a little bit of time, it's a couple times of the year, and then you end up with your zucchini haul, which, we all know that these plants are the biggest producers out there in the garden, right? Okay, so that's another way to intercept. And the third way to intercept is, did you notice that the after it's full and it basically goes deep, it goes 1 to 2 inches deep in the soil to pupate and get ready to emerge again as a moth. And so this is what a lot of insects do. They have this cycle where they go underground and they emerge later. And you know what people really hate when they're sleeping? They hate to be disturbed. And so different growers have different ways to deal with this. Some growers do gently break up and scuffle the top surface of their soil to disturb these pest cycles. And they're doing it without tilling too deeply. It's like a really low till method, just to shake up those pests if they're behaving badly. And, there's lots of different gardening styles, and there are a lot of people who do absolutely no tilling. I would still recommend this kind of scuffling of the top surface of the soil, because if you do this, you can interrupt a lot of pest cycles.
This is the intervention most gardeners never try because they do not know the borer goes underground. Disrupting that underground stage is one of the most effective things you can do, and it costs nothing.
Cycles. So this is something that's possible if you have what's here on the screen is a collinear hoe, and it's nice because it has a small head and it's an upright tool. You can stand up and use it, and it's so small that you can basically just kind of wiggle it in between your crops, and you can get rid of some of those early pest cycles before they emerge as adults. So this is an option. It may not be for everybody. You may choose this isn't right for you. Some people choose to incorporate chickens at this point into their garden system because what do chickens do? They scuffle the top surface of the soil, and then basically they eat all those lovely larvae in the ground, and the pupa, I should say. And so either way, you're interrupting the cycle and keeping the next group of adults from emerging. So that is a way to think about this from the perspective of the pest and to see where you can interrupt that cycle. All right. Now, what do you do? There are hundreds of garden insects. So when you're first getting started, how can you know each and every one of them? And how can you know which ones are going to be a big deal in your garden? Because local conditions play an important role, right? So I didn't know when I moved from Detroit to Brooklyn that the squash vine borer was going to be my downfall. I had no clue that was going to happen because the pests were different in Detroit. So how do you know? Well, here's the good news. In my experience, each garden has about the top 3 pests. And once you really master them, you have it figured out. So when you're looking at your garden and it's ramping up for the season, what happens is that when the heat comes, so do the insects and all those pests, right? And so you don't have to worry when there's just a couple bugs here and there. That's actually pretty healthy, and there will be beneficial insects that come along and take care of it if you have a nice, healthy ecosystem. But just notice and focus on any insects when the population starts to build. That's when you realize that, okay, this one's going to be a problem, and you want to figure out how to interrupt its life cycle. And you're only focusing on probably a couple pests in your area, typically. And then you can integrate the pest strategies that you find into a system so you're not reacting next year, but you're creating the habitat that you want. So this does it's circular, right? And we have a chance every year to do it better. And one thing I would recommend is there are I forget I don't know any brands off the top of my head because I don't sell products, but there are these sticky traps that you can put out in your garden, and you can see what kind of pests are coming through your garden and how many of each are coming into your garden, so you know which ones are going to be an issue. And you can also date them, so keep a log and notice, okay, this one starts to show up on this date in my garden, and then you notice over the course of the season, oh, that one wasn't really a problem, so I'm just going to forget about that one. Oh, but this one, it showed up in August, and it turned out to be a heck of a problem, so I'm going to pay attention to this one, and I'm going to figure out how to interrupt its life cycle. All right? So that's how you think about when you have a lot of different pests to deal with, and you start to create your system where you're not reacting, but you're creating the habitat that you want. Okay, so a couple of other pests. How do I deal with caterpillars on my leafy greens? Now, there's a couple different kinds of caterpillars. You probably have seen them. They typically lay eggs on the underside of the leaves, and they start to eat holes in your leafy greens. Eventually, they will eat the whole leaf if they grow to adulthood. So, what do I do in my garden system to look at these caterpillars and take care of them? So here's my garden system, and what I generally do about caterpillars, and granted, I'm going to I'm going to preface this with, this has worked for all of the places that I have lived, and I know a woman who caterpillars are probably her biggest issue, even though she's got years of gardening experience and she's mastered every other pest. In her area, caterpillars happen to be the worst one. So on the scale, your area could be, or wherever you are, you could be on the scale of this is a small problem or this is a big problem. So what I do with caterpillars is I harvest weekly. So those eggs, it takes them a little while to hatch and become caterpillars, and it takes them even longer to become adult caterpillars that can do real damage. And so when I'm harvesting weekly all the older leaves, generally, I don't see the problem of the caterpillars. I might see the eggs when I take my greens inside to wash them off. And here I'm talking about kale, collards, sometimes on the cabbage as well, right? And so generally, even on the cabbage, when I'm growing my cabbage, I'll pull off the lower leaves of the cabbage and I'll take them in and cook them so that I can keep cleaning up the plant a bit. And this really keeps a lot of those eggs from becoming larger adults. And this suits me just fine because harvesting regularly brings all this food onto my plate, right? So one other thing I wanted to say about these caterpillars, this is one of my tricks. I rarely share this, so you're in for a treat right here. One of the things I do with my cabbage is that with cabbage heads, it's a pretty hardy vegetable, and the leaves are super hardy. And so sometimes I just come along with my hose and I just spray the underside of the cabbage really hard where I know those eggs are. And that water is what ends up watering the cabbage. It drips off the cabbage and waters the cabbage, but that really high jet stream of water will knock all the eggs off as well. And so in a couple seconds, I end up taking care of all of them. So that's another little trick I do in my preventative strategies as well. All right, so let's see, how do I deal with aphids on my greens? And so aphids, they could be on your kale, your collards. There's lots of different types of aphids. They could be on your tomato plants. They could be on any kind of plant. But let's talk about those greens for a minute again. So I find most aphids, actually this is true of even if they aren't necessarily on the greens, I find this is true if they're on the tomato plants as well, is that most aphids are a sign of just general garden stress.
This reframe changes everything about how you see aphids. They are a symptom, not a cause. Find the stress, remove it, and the aphids disappear on their own.
So if it's not the soil, it's usually a combination of temperature and moisture stress. Maybe the plants haven't gotten what they need in terms of water and they're a little stressed out. Maybe they've gone back and forth between a lot of water and a little water. If it's greens, I've noticed that when my plants dry out a lot and they're not seeing the amount of water they need, they tend to increase in the number of aphids they get, especially as it gets hotter and hotter. And then, of course, there is a particular aphid called the cabbage aphid that comes around when temperatures are cooler. So generally what I find with those aphids is that they're not that much of, for me, they don't bother me so much. I tend to harvest regularly enough that they aren't an issue. And if I'm watering enough and the temperatures are right for those plants, I tend to not see those aphids. And granted, again, that's saying that my soil has enough compost in it as well. I recently realized as I saw some aphids on one of my garden beds that I was growing year round and it was about time to put compost down in my bed, and it was like the aphids showed up and then my calendar the next week said add compost to bed 3. I was like, well, that makes sense because the aphids just showed up. So there really is all of these relationships that make the right habitat for those pests to find your food, all right? And I'm not generally talking here about what to do once those bugs are there and like how to get them off, because I would rather have you prevent them in the first place because that's going to give you more food, all right? Okay, so
think about where you were at the start of this video. Watching your squash wilt in July, assuming you did something wrong. not knowing that a moth you never saw laid 150 eggs at the base of your plants in June while you were not looking. Now look at what you know. The squash vine borer emerges in late June. She lays her eggs. Those eggs hatch in 9 to 11 days. That 9 to 11 day window is where you stop her. Once a week, wipe the stems with a wet rag. 4 weeks in June and July. The whole cycle broken. Plant a second round in late July after the egg-laying window closes, and your autumn squash grows with 0 borer pressure. Scuffle the top inch of soil at the end of the season. Disturb the pupating larvae before they can emerge again next summer. 3 windows, 3 interventions, each one costing you nothing but a few minutes of attention at the right time. Stacey Murphy has been proving this works for years. Now you have the timing. Now you have the windows. And this summer, your squash is not dying.
You are not the gardener who loses their squash every July anymore. You are the one who knows the life cycle, who wipes the stems in June, who plants the second round in late July, who scuffles the soil at the end of the season, who works with the cycle instead of being surprised by it. If you want to keep learning from Stacey Murphy, there is a whole community of gardeners growing extraordinary food through every season, completely free at growyourownvegetables.org. This Q&A was recorded at a past Grow Your Own Vegetables event, and what Stacey just shared with you took her years of growing, failing, and figuring out to discover. But here is what most people watching this do not know. Stacey is just one of 15 world-class experts we have sat down with. Soil scientists who have spent decades unlocking what makes food grow stronger. Clinical herbalists who have turned ordinary gardens into medicine cabinets. Master growers who have cracked the code on growing more food in less space with less effort than you ever thought possible. 15 experts, 15 breakthroughs, each one sharing the single lesson that took them a lifetime to learn. And every single session is waiting for you right now, completely free. 1 registration, instant access, no credit card. Just go to growyourownvegetables.org/summit, and the moment you sign up, all of it is yours.